Forget crypto. Cows were the original blue-chip investment. Before Bitcoin, before gold, before Wall Street's flashing tickers, there was a creature that mooed. Across ancient plains, people didn't check their portfolio. They counted their cattle. This isn't a metaphor, it's literal. In the world's earliest economies, your bank account walked on four legs, ate grass, and occasionally kicked you in the ribs. But here's the twist. These cows didn't just buy food or land. In one stunning case, they nearly bought an entire kingdom. Sounds insane, right? How could livestock, smelly, stubborn, mooing livestock, become the backbone of human wealth? The answer lies in something deeper than trade. Cattle were more than assets. They were status, currency, and even divine messengers. In Africa, Asia, and Europe, civilizations rose and fell on the strength of their herds. To understand how a cow could buy a kingdom, we need to travel back, way back, to the time when power was measured in milk and muscle, not money and markets. Picture this: the grasslands of ancient Mesopotamia, 8,000 years ago. Humanity is just learning to farm. Cities don't exist yet, and the concept of rich or poor is meaningless. But someone, somewhere, realizes something revolutionary. Cows reproduce. Unlike gold or shells, you don't just have them, they multiply. That one insight ignited the world's first economic boom. Livestock became both the symbol and substance of power. Whoever controlled the cows controlled survival, trade, and eventually, entire empires. Cattle weren't just money, they were life insurance, social currency, and a kind of spiritual Wi-Fi connection to the gods. In ancient Sumer, the goddess Inanna's temples held sacred herds, managed like divine treasuries. In India, the cow became holy, a giver of sustenance and cosmic balance. In Africa's Rift Valley, tribes like the Maasai saw cattle as extensions of the soul. To steal one was worse than murder. Across continents, the message was the same. Wealth wasn't what you owned, it was what you fed. But let's move from symbolism to hard economics. Around 3000 BCE, cattle became the backbone of trade systems. You could buy land, slaves, or even pay fines using cows. The Latin word pecunia, meaning money, literally comes from pecus, meaning cattle, and the English word fee, same origin. Imagine negotiating with a merchant. I'll give you 3 cows for that house. That wasn't barter, it was a standardized transaction. The cow wasn't just currency, it was the first standard of value the world ever agreed upon. Now here's where it gets wild. Because cattle had offspring, they broke the rules of early economics. Unlike gold, which sits still, a cow is a compound interest machine. If you owned 10 cows, next year you might have 15. The rich literally grew richer while the poor couldn't catch up. For ancient rulers, livestock wasn't just monies, it was the engine of dynastic power. Whoever had the most cows didn't just have wealth. They had armies, influence, and followers, and one king proved it spectacularly. Meet King Nand of the ancient Indian Nanda dynasty, around 345 BCE. Nand was not born royal, he was the son of a barber. But he had something far more valuable than noble blood: cows. Historical accounts describe Nand as possessing herds so vast they covered the horizon. His wealth in cattle translated directly into military might. With endless supplies of leather, food, and trade leverage, he turned livestock into literal political capital, dethroning monarchs who underestimated him. He didn't inherit power, he milked it. And Nand wasn't alone. Across Africa, stories tell of kingdoms literally bought with cattle. Among the Zulu and Shona, bride prices and land deals were settled in cows, not coins. In the 19th century, a young warrior named Shaka Zulu built an empire fueled by cattle raids. His armies didn't just conquer for land, they conquered for livestock. To own cattle was to command loyalty. To lose cattle was to lose your people. In that world, cows weren't property. They were the population itself. But the most jaw-dropping story comes from the East African highlands, a legend that still echoes today. According to oral history, a young chieftain named Mugasha once traded a legendary herd, hundreds of head of cattle, to unite rival tribes under his rule. That act of buying peace became mythologized as the day a cow bought a kingdom. It wasn't bribery, it was genius economics. Mugasha understood that power wasn't taken by force, it was purchased through shared prosperity. His wealth built loyalty, not war. So why were cows so powerful in shaping civilizations? The secret lies in scarcity and dependency. In a world without refrigeration, a cow was a living refrigerator, producing milk daily, meat occasionally, and labor constantly. It could transport goods, plow fields, and fertilize crops. One animal could sustain an entire family. Multiply that by 100, and you controlled communities. This created a dangerous dynamic. Those who owned cows could dictate who lived comfortably and who starved. Economics became ecology, and ecology became empire. Fast forward to ancient Egypt. Pharaohs didn't hoard gold alone, they hoarded cattle. Tomb paintings show massive herds dedicated to temples, with scribes meticulously counting cows like bankers tallying accounts. Each cow represented both divine favor and taxable wealth. In one sense, cattle were Egypt's first central bank. The pharaoh's cows weren't just symbols, they literally backed the value of the state. Think of it as a golden standard with horns. Pharaoh didn't just rule people, he ruled ruminants. Even in Europe, long before the euro, cows were the coin of choice. Celtic tribes measured wealth in seds, units of cattle. In Ireland, legal disputes were settled by the honor price of a person, how many cows their reputation was worth. If you insulted a noble, you'd owe them 10 cows. Insult a peasant, maybe 2 goats. Justice, economy, and pride were all denominated in livestock. And guess what? These systems worked. Societies thrived on bovine-backed currencies for thousands of years. But all bubbles burst, even the bovine kind. The problem with cow-based economies is brutally biological. Disease, famine, theft. One plague could wipe out a nation's GDP overnight. The first market crashes weren't on trading floors. They were in fields full of dying cattle. Archaeological records show dramatic collapses in early African and Mediterranean economies after livestock plagues. When your currency eats grass, a drought is financial Armageddon. Wealth evaporated faster than milk in the desert sun. That's exactly what happened in 1200 BCE when the mysterious cattle plague swept through parts of the Near East. Herds died en masse, trade stopped, and regional powers crumbled. Whole cities were abandoned. For the first time, humanity realized a terrifying truth. If your money can die, you don't control it. It controls you. It was this crisis that forced societies to evolve beyond cattle. Metal coins, grain standards, and later gold became attempts to fix the cow conundrum. The age of livestock money began to fade. But the legacy didn't die. Our language still whispers the tale. Capital comes from the Latin caput, meaning head, as in head of cattle. Your capital gains literally mean cow growth. And the phrase pecuniary interests, still rooted in the Latin pecus, cows again. Even stock market is a linguistic fossil of the days when wealth was measured in livestock stock. We don't trade cows anymore, but we still speak their language. The ghost of the cow haunts every financial sentence we say, and here's where the story takes a darkly funny twist. When modern economists study the origins of capitalism, they often overlook the moo factor, but the parallels are uncanny. Early cattle owners hoarded resources, created social hierarchies, and introduced debt systems. Peasants borrowed cows, repaid in calves, and fell into generational debt, just like modern credit. In fact, the very concept of interest comes from livestock breeding. Profit, growth, and compounding all began with a cow giving birth. The stock market was born in the pasture. But let's zoom out. What happens when an economy built on reproduction meets the limits of nature? Boom and bust. That pattern repeats through history, whether in cows, tulips, or crypto coins. Ancient herders overbred, overgrazed, and destabilized ecosystems. Eventually, the land could no longer sustain their wealth. Sound familiar? Modern financial systems face the same trap. Infinite growth in a finite world. The cow was humanity's first warning label, and we ignored it. We're still chasing compound returns in a world of limited grass. Even religion tried to warn us. In the Old Testament, the Israelites famously worshipped a golden calf, a symbol of false wealth. The irony? They literally replaced their living wealth with a dead one. They chose metal over meat, illusion over utility. That story wasn't just idolatry, it was economics. Humanity's obsession with symbols of wealth began there. We traded the real productivity of cattle for the shimmering abstraction of gold, a choice that shaped the modern world for better or worse. But what about the mysterious kingdom the title promised, the one a cow supposedly bought? It's more than legend. In regions of ancient East Africa, particularly in present-day Uganda, oral history tells of King Ruhinda, who unified clans by offering massive cattle dowries to rival chiefs. The alliances forged through those herds created one of the earliest regional monarchies, the Kingdom of Nkora. So yes, in a very literal sense, a cow, or rather thousands of them, did buy a kingdom. King Ruhinda's strategy was economic diplomacy before the term existed. Instead of invading, he invested. Instead of taking hostages, he gave herds. His neighbors became his allies, not out of fear, but mutual benefit. It was a masterclass in soft power. The cows were not just gifts, they were bonds, like early treasury notes. Each exchange tied clans together in a web of interdependence. Ruhinda's empire wasn't built by conquest, it was bought by cows. History remembers him not as a warlord, but as a deal-maker. But every golden age meets its reckoning. Ruhinda's wealth-based peace couldn't last forever. As generations passed, greed and competition returned. The value of cattle inflated, herds grew too large, pastures overgrazed, and diseases spread. Neighboring clans began raiding for cows, and soon the alliances built on livestock cracked under their own weight. The very thing that united them, wealth, now divided them. Economists call this a resource trap. Anthropologists call it karma. Either way, the kingdom that cows bought began to buckle under their hooves, and yet humanity didn't learn. When coins replaced cows, the same story replayed: greed, growth, and collapse. The Roman Empire taxed in cattle, then switched to silver, then debased its currency until the economy imploded. Medieval Europe's manners were built on herds. The Black Death wiped them out. In every era, wealth systems evolved, but the psychology behind them didn't. The cow may have vanished from the ledger, but the logic of accumulation remained. The moo became the mantra: more is always better. Let's pause for a fun but haunting irony. The world's first bank run happened not at a financial institution, but in a field. When a drought hit 13th century Mali, herders rushed to slaughter or sell their cows before they starved. The local value of cattle crashed overnight, inflation of the absurd kind. Cows became cheap because everyone had too many dead ones. Economically, it was the medieval equivalent of the 2008 housing crash. The herd was the mortgage, and the grass, the liquidity. The same pattern struck Europe during the Great Famine of 1315. Starving peasants slaughtered their livestock, crashing the food economy. Cattle-based wealth evaporated and money lost meaning. In panic, people turned to religion, praying to the same gods they'd once offered cows to. The irony of economics came full circle. When the market collapses, belief replaces value. That cycle, boom, bust, belief, still defines modern finance. From Wall Street to Silicon Valley, every herd mentality crash has its roots in a literal herd. But let's not just dwell on doom. The cow also gave us the blueprint for stability, diversification. Ancient traders learned not to rely solely on livestock. They mixed herds with crops, crafts, and later, coins. That idea, spreading risk, became the cornerstone of every modern investment portfolio. Your 401k owes its logic to a farmer who once thought, maybe I shouldn't put all my cows in one pen. That's right. The cow not only bought kingdoms, it also invented risk management. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, and the cow's role evolved yet again. No longer the currency, it became the commodity. Leather, milk, beef, products now powered global trade. The irony? The cow, once the measure of wealth, became the fuel for it. Farmers didn't hoard them anymore. They sold them en masse. Economies industrialized the animal that once symbolized life. Wealth, once sacred and alive, was now mechanical and dead. Humanity had turned its first god of abundance into just another factory asset. Still, even in our modern world, traces of that old reverence survive. Think of India, where cows roam freely through megacities like Mumbai, living relics of a time when economics and spirituality were one, or the Maasai in Kenya who still count wealth in cows, measuring prosperity not in banknotes but in bellows. Ask a Maasai elder, what makes a man rich? And he'll tell you, many cows, many friends. To them, wealth isn't digital, it's communal. And maybe they're not wrong. Because here's the kicker, even in the age of algorithms, our financial instincts remain prehistoric. Investors still chase herd trends, markets still stampede, speculators still overgraze assets until the field, whether it's real estate or crypto, lies barren. Economists call it irrational exuberance. Anthropologists might call it herd panic. Different vocabulary, same biology. When you zoom out, human finance looks less like math and more like migration. We move, we cluster, we chase greener pastures, and then, inevitably, we trample them. Remember that golden calf from the Bible? It's more relevant now than ever. In 2021, cryptocurrencies and NFTs were hailed as the new gold. Investors worshipped digital idols, and just like that ancient calf, they promised infinite returns from nothing real. The result? The same ancient cycle. Creation, inflation, collapse. The cow taught us that wealth should produce something tangible, milk, labor, or sustenance. But modern markets often produce only speculation. We're trading symbols again, and forgetting what real value means, and yet history whispers a warning or maybe a challenge. Every civilization that forgot the function of wealth eventually collapsed. When cows became trophies instead of tools, famine followed. When coins became vanity, empires fell. When money becomes disconnected from the real world, from food, labor, or energy, it devours itself. We saw it with the Nandas, the pharaohs, the Romans, and maybe now with us. Humanity's problem was never the cow, it's that we keep mistaking symbols of wealth for wealth itself. So, what are the takeaways from this 8,000-year financial soap opera starring cattle? First, wealth must create something useful. Cows gave milk, not just status. Today, investments should do the same. Create jobs, innovation, or value. Second, growth without limits is a myth. Even cows stop producing when overbred. Infinite expansion destroys ecosystems, whether natural or economic. And third, community beats currency. When wealth circulates, as herds once did, everyone thrives. When it hoards, kingdoms fall. Ask Rohinda. Ask Wall Street. And here's the funny part. The cow might be staging a comeback. As the world faces financial instability and climate crises, tangible assets, land, livestock, resources, are regaining value. In developing nations, cattle still function as insurance, dowry, and currency. And in some digital circles, NFTs of cows literally sell for thousands. The symbol that started it all refuses to die. The cow remains humanity's favorite metaphor for value, patient, fertile, and occasionally capable of buying kingdoms. So next time someone brags about their crypto gains or a hot stock tip, ask them this: how many cows could that buy? It's not a joke, it's a reminder. Real wealth feeds people, it sustains, it multiplies naturally, not digitally. And maybe, just maybe, the secret to surviving the next financial collapse isn't hiding in Silicon Valley or Wall Street, but grazing quietly on a hillside somewhere, chewing cud, watching humans repeat the same old mistakes with fancier spreadsheets. In the end, The Cow That Bought a Kingdom isn't just a story about livestock, it's the biography of wealth itself. From grass to gold, from barter to blockchain, humanity's greatest asset has always been its ability to transform need into power. But every transformation carries a cost, so the next time you chase profit, remember the cow, the first banker, the first investment, the first collapse. And if you enjoyed this story, feed the algorithm, like, subscribe, and keep your financial pastures green.